All right. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Is this thing working? You sound good? I sound good? Well, of course, I always sound good, right? Welcome to this is the tech session centered around lessons learned. I'm very, very excited because I will be doing very little talking, and we have three distinguished guests here. Three utilities that are all at a different point in their journey of private LTE. So each one of them is going to present, but I want to do a quick introduction. We've got J.J. Stetler from Evergy. He'll be our first speaker. We've got Ron Brady from Excel Energy will be our third. And then bringing up the last will be Spencer Burks. I believe we have an hour on there. So we're going to do about 20 minutes or less. And we'll, as JJ is done, then we'll have questions for JJ, and then Ron, and then questions for Ron, Spencer, questions for Spencer, and then I'll come back up and close us out. Okay, so with that, we're going to get started. JJ Stetler, Evergy.
Thanks, Mike. All right. So, again, I want to thank everybody for being here at UBBA and being here in Kansas City. We're so glad to have you guys here. Hopefully you guys have had a good time this week and everything's went well. So, going to talk a little bit about our deployment. As you guys know, we've been deploying since somewhere we started at the end of 21 is when we put out our RFP to the vendors for our LTE equipment. And so since then, we've been moving pretty quick. We've got right at 83 tower sites up online with Band 8. We've got 53 of those sites also have Band 41 on as well. So kind of talk a little bit about what we've done and a lot of the good things that we've done and maybe talk a little bit about some of the things that we maybe would have done different. So we do cover, Kansas City is our headquarters. We cover the eastern third of Kansas and the western third of Missouri. We do intertwine with Ameren, so Ameren's also in the process of doing the same thing, so we've got some synergies there. But we cover, we have about 1.6 million customers. We have an RF footprint of about 60,000 square miles, so pretty good size footprint out there. So this is kind of our timeline here of how we've been deploying. So back in March of 21, our business units and our management decided that, hey, we're gonna proceed with this. We went out and obtained spectrum and obtained the spectrum in September of 21. Issued an RFP in October. In December, we actually awarded that to Ericsson and partnered with those guys. And then by March of 22, we had our first 3 sites on air, and we made our first call on March 27th of 22. So moved pretty quick at getting that first few sites up and running and getting things going. So there's a lot of days we kind of felt like we were building the plane as we were flying the plane. So there was a lot of things going on. And then make sure I'm telling you this right here because you've got it all here in front of you. In December of 22, we had 20 RAN sites on air. And then in 23, by June of 23, we had 50 more sites on, or 50 total sites. And kind of worked through here. And today we're at the 83 sites that we have on air. So in March of 24, we have a roaming agreement with our partner U.S. Cellular. We set up an IPX connection that comes in, and we had our first roaming call in March of 24. So moved along pretty quick. Been pretty successful here. So we operate 2 cores. We have they're set up in a geo redundancy mode. We have one in Topeka. We have one here in Kansas City. For the most part, they're set up in an active-active situation. There's certain aspects of the core that are in standby because that's the way LTE works. But for the most part, everything is set up to where we can have all of the load on either core, or normally it's split. Our east side traffic comes through our east core, our west side traffic comes through our west core. But we have a failover capability to where either core can handle all of the load. So we felt like that's the best way to go with it. Our management system, our E&M's, Ericsson's network management system, we do have one instance of that. We didn't feel that that was a critical path to keep redundancy on. So we do have one instance of that. It's located in our Topeka data center. We did purchase a 4G, 5G capable core. So we're working right now with our Band 8 and Band 41 today is all 4G, but we are looking at going to 5G on our Band 41 deployment. So we've got some things we're working through there, but that our goal is to look at 5G on that. We did partner with OneLayer. So OneLayer, one of the things that we figured out as we were going through this process is there wasn't a nice, easy way to provision and manage SIM cards. There wasn't a nice GUI interface. We can import Excel spreadsheets and things like that to set up SIM cards and activate devices, but we needed a platform that would allow us to manage those SIM cards, activate them, get them online, and then also give us some security there as well. So if somebody took a SIM card out, moved it to another device, how would we know that? If a device started ramping up, maybe it's a device that only needs 10 kilobits per second, and all of a sudden it's pulling megabits, what's going on there? That's a red flag. So OneLayer came to us with a package that they could do that security aspect of it, and so we worked with them to develop the SIM management, the provisioning and activation, and so that's actually the tool that we use today to activate our SIM cards and manage our devices. So we can activate it, deactivate it, take it online, offline if we need to, set up alerts if we see traffic that's an anomaly. We can automatically knock those guys down as well. So they've got a great product, and it's been a great add-on for us. I did mention the IPX connectivity for roaming. This is one of those things that took a little bit of time to get set up. Technically, the setup wasn't too bad, but there was the contractual side of it. So getting through all the contracts and things like that, getting it set up took a little bit of time. We brought in multiple circuits. So if you set up IPX connectivity, typically with the different operators, you're going to see they're going to go into data centers like Equinix or somebody like that. So we have multiple connections out of our data center into Equinix data centers around the country for redundancy. So if any of those go down, fails over to the other ones, keeps everything up and running. So we do have devices that are today roaming, and that's actually a little bit by design. So we're testing it all out. We're just making sure that everything's working good. But we also have sites that we don't have on air yet, but our distribution automation team or our customers inside of Evergy are going ahead and putting devices out in the field, and so they're taking our SIM card that is dual MZ to where they can be on our network or they can be on the public carrier's network. So they're roaming, and it's all coming back to this IPX connectivity. So because we're moving so fast, and we are a telecommunication division inside of a power company, we're not a carrier by any means. We didn't necessarily have the resources in-house to manage our core. We've got some great RF guys, and we understand the RF side of it, but this core is a very complex system. I want to show you some pictures of our network here, of our servers, but we've engaged Ericsson to manage our services for us. Now our plan is we'll ramp up, we'll get ourselves to where we've got our own resources in-house, but we're leaning on Ericsson today for our knock services and for any changes and things like that that we're doing. So that's been a great model for us. It's let us focus on getting the network built, getting devices out in the field, and not have to worry as much about keeping it running. They're helping us keep it running, and it's been a good investment for us and a great partnership. So this is our one of our data centers here. It's not too exciting. It's just a whole rack full of servers, right? So all of these are Kubernetes based. Didn't even know what a Kubernetes was until we got into this, but I still think it's a made up thing. But all virtual machines, it's all basically a big cloud, but it sits on our prem. So it's kind of a really cool setup. We have this identical setup in our other data center. So everything's matched one for one for capacity and redundancy. So our RAN sites, we've got our initial deployment, our initial design, we had 94 RAN sites that we were going to deploy. We're still on track to have those deployed here this year. We have, like I said, 83 of them online today. But when we designed it for 80% coverage. When we started doing the network design, we looked at it and said, what would it cost to do 100% of coverage? Cover all of our devices, cover all of our area. And that 20% doubled the cost of our RAN deployment. So that 20% was significantly more than what the 80% was. So we made the decision to go 80%. We knew we were going to have a roaming agreement with somebody that would hopefully cover that 20%. And then as we started getting devices out there, if we see a location where we have a bunch of devices that are roaming, then that's where we go plan our next site. So since we did our initial plan, we've actually added about 8 more tower sites that we're adding over the next 6 months or so. But 6 of those will be greenfield towers, be brand new sites. Some of them will be 400-foot guide towers. Some of them will be 150-foot monopoles that we'll have out in the location. So we're currently working with our substation team. We've got a kind of a canned 150-foot monopole that we are asking our substation crews to put in at every substation. Anytime we build a new substation, we're putting a monopole in there. So it's a pretty low cost investment at the beginning. They're already out there doing the geotechnical work. They're doing the drilling piers and all that stuff. So all they got to do is drill one more hole, fill one more hole full of concrete, and stand one more pole up. And then as we see a need for fill-in coverage, we'll come in here and activate that site, light it up, and have a better footprint. So now, not all. I say all of our substations are getting it. We have one that's going in, and it's a mile from one of our tower sites today, up next to St. Joe, Missouri. We're not doing a tower there. We're not doing a monopole there because we have such good coverage off of that tower site. But some of the things to think about, and if you heard Charles and Ryan talk yesterday from Evergy, we did have some towers that we had to modify. So as we went out and did structural analysis on towers, we had to consider our loading that we had on there. We had to consider the folks that we had leasing our tower sites, and then do a structural analysis on it. And I shouldn't say a lot of those, but several of those we had to go and do a modification on to make sure it would handle the load. We had 3 towers that just, by the time we looked at what the cost was to modify that tower to handle the load, and just to get it to the point where it would handle our load and nothing else, we could build a new tower. So it just economically, it made sense to, build another tower directly beside of it, tear down the existing tower, and continue on. So, and we can obviously design it to be, usable in the future for anything else that we might do. So, a lot of work there. There's a lot of things to consider when you're building your RAN sites. We were very fortunate that we have about 130 towers in our inventory throughout our entire service area. So all of our towers that we're using for LTE are our own towers, and we didn't have to, short of these 3 sites that we're rebuilding, we didn't have to go out and do greenfield builds. So a greenfield build for a tower site, as you all probably know, that takes a while. You got to get your NEPA, SHPO, all your tribal notifications, things like that. That can take 6 months, 8 months to get through. And then you got to get the site built. So, and then you've got your zoning and planning and all your local jurisdiction stuff that you got to get through. So we were very fortunate, and the reason that we're able to move so quick, one of the big reasons, is because of the fact that we owned all of our sites and we didn't have to get leases or anything like that. So this was our initial coverage with our LTE. So you're going to see that there's some open spots here. I don't know if you can see. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it doesn't show up very well. But there's some holes in. You'll see some holes there. Well, if you're familiar with our territory, especially in Kansas, the only thing out there are cattle. So big grazing lands. For some reason, cows don't need LTE today. Maybe in the future they will. But, we'll have some transmission lines that may traverse through those areas and whatnot. But we know that that's not an area where we have assets. Or maybe it's an area that a cooperative operates today and we're not in that area. We actually kind of cover up most of our cooperatives with our RF coverage anyhow. But, those are planned. So those are some of the 20% areas that are open. You see the little Pac-Man shape, C shape up there in the northeast corner. That's actually how Ameren kind of comes in, and we intertwine with the Ameren folks. So anyway, so that's what our coverage looks like there, and I'm getting the wrap it up sign here. So this is our builds. This is what it looks like from the sites. We're doing band 41 and band 8 on a lot of our sites. So this is the typical T-boom. Looks just like a cellular deployment. So if you're familiar with any of the cellular stuff that's out there, because it is cellular, that's exactly what it is. We're using hybrid cables. We're using sector antennas. So our existing sites, we have comm huts at all of our sites. Generators, battery backup. All of our sites have a generator, and all of our sites have a battery plant. So our battery plants are good for about 8 hours or better. All of our sites are on our own microwave or fiber fed. We don't lease any circuits to cover our sites, so that gives us that better security. And we're running the MPLS backbone at each of those locations. So this is kind of in our huts, the baseband unit that runs the radios upstairs, and then just one of our battery plants and one of our huts look like. So anyway, just real quick here, I'll run through some of the things to think about your spectrum. That's number one. You can't design your network until you know what spectrum you're going to use. If you don't know what that spectrum is, the difference between us on our band 8 and band 41, if we were deploying band 8, we can cover our entire network, at least 80% of our network, with 95 towers, right? If we're just doing it with band 41 at 2.5 gigahertz, it's going to take us probably 300 towers to cover that. So significant difference, and actually it's going to take more than that, but you got to know what that spectrum is going to look like before you can start designing your network, and you're going to know what that cost is going to be. So network security, make sure you start early with those guys. Have them involved in your RFPs, have them involved in all your conversations up front, and it makes your life a lot easier, makes their life a lot easier as well. Get them on board. And your SIMs, that's just a reoccurring thing, is make sure you start your SIMs early. We way underestimated how long it was going to take to do SIMs. So, but there's a whole lot of things here that you want to consider. Your connectivity for your IPX, your roaming. You want to make sure you're drive testing, checking everything, make sure it's working, all that good stuff. And RAN engineering, you can find RAN guys pretty easy. That core engineering is the hard one. That's what we said. We're working with Ericsson today to do that core engineering, but that's the hard one. Finding those people, they're not a dime a dozen. And then the last thing that I have here is make sure you get you a trusted tower crew. So we've got a great crew that we're working with. They do good work getting everything knocked out. Closeout packages are good. They take care of their punch list pretty quick. Very rarely do they have a punch list. So Anyway, I think that's it. So kind of ran through it pretty quick. So. I'm going to leave it to you.
All right, thank you. Hi, my name is Ron Brady. I'm with Xcel Energy. I'm a senior technical architect, and I've been involved in our LTE project since the very beginning. Just a little bit about Xcel Energy. It's a major U.S. electricity and natural gas company with operations in 8 western and midwestern states. They provide a comprehensive portfolio of energy-related products and services to millions of electricity and natural gas customers through its operating companies. So I want to talk a little bit about our PLTE journey. As you can see, it started in earnest for Xcel Energy by acquiring spectrum from Anterix in November of 2022. Now, like some of you, I had a little bit of experience with the 800 narrowbanding and working with some of the same folks that are now at Anterix, and so I was a little skeptical about a partnership with Anterix. I can honestly tell you that they have been one of the best partners that we have had in this entire project. And they were instrumental in us being able to deploy as quickly as we did, just simply because they were clearing spectrum left and right. Every county, every area where we needed spectrum, it didn't matter. Anterix, they came to the plate and they really supported us very, very well. The Xcel team, driven by its business requirements, in conjunction with its vendor partners, stood up 2 geo-redundant cores in 3 sites with devices registered and attached by the end of 2023. That doesn't sound too spectacular, except that we didn't start until July of 2023. 5 months, 3 weeks, that was accomplished. Our vendor partners stood beside us the whole way, and they were skeptical. They were saying, hey, we just don't think you guys can do this. We don't know if we can do this. We don't know if we can provide the equipment. But our team was committed to doing this, and we worked together. And what made this even more interesting is the fact that we pulled all engineering in-house. We didn't outsource that. We pulled all that in-house. We had a very green crew. We had brand new people. We had some people that were experienced that really knew how to build sites. I mean, and they're sitting out here among you guys. Joe's sitting back there waving. Joe and I are really good friends, but we don't mind locking horns every now and then. So I can tell you right now, Joe did an excellent job. Dean, they did an excellent job. And if it wasn't for their skill and their know-how, we never would have done that. So it's really important for you to have, I'll say this, it's really, really important for you to have skilled RAN technical people, engineers, guys that understand tower crews and how to engage them and how to deploy them. Also working with your substation construction crews and your union crews. You need someone who's knowledgeable. So that kind of all coalesced together for us so that we could get this done in such a short time. 2024, the build out continues. So currently we have 6 sites. We'll probably have 7 sites on the air by the end of the year. We have spent a large portion of this year working on the applications. We have working integrated over-the-air platform. We have 500 SIM cards that have been manually tested and verified to be working and operational on our platform. We also are building a gateway in the SPS area. For those of you that don't know what I mean by a gateway, we have 2 geo-redundant cores, one in Denver, another one in Minnesota, and we have a gateway in Amarillo, Texas, which is going to be our aggregator for all of our traffic, so that that cell site backhaul doesn't have to home run all the way to one of those cores. It also provides a testing and integration point. It's essentially a remote core office, but it operates with gateway software versus full-blown core software. So I wanted to give, this is what our core setup looks like. We made some decisions that were a little different. We decided that we knew we wanted an on-prem solution. We wanted to maintain control of our own destiny. But one of the things that we also did was we didn't bring in another vSphere for some of these applications. We decided to put that on our own bare metal. Now that sounds really nice until you realize that that's about 48 days worth of coding and literally putting that on your course. So we worked with our Nokia vendor partners and set this up in Coppell, Texas. We set the cores up. We set ran up with dummy IPs and made sure that we staged everything prior to deployment. This was a really good decision. This allowed us to deploy with confidence. We knew that this was going to work. We knew that the configurations were there. We knew the connectivity was there. We were able to test it before we actually deployed it in the field. All we had to do was change the IPs to protect the guilty. This is an example of one of our first core sites. Today you'll see our cabinet, which is back here in the demonstration area. It's a little different. This was one of the very first ones. Because we were moving so quickly, we took cabinets that were off the shelf, and this just gives you an example of how we built each RAN side out. We used a standard rectifier, two battery strings. That gives us 8 hours plus. This is inside of one of our substations, and then you can see we have our E-Node B complex there. I know I'm going fast, but we just want to make sure we cover everything and give you time for questions. So XL Energy, as I've told you, we've deployed 2 geo-redundant cores and a gateway complex. This supports about 300 sites or about 300,000 subscribers. So, you know, you say, well, that's a lot, right? But when you consider the growth of our AMI, DIMMs, DE, all of those operations, not to mention natural gas, which doesn't have a mesh network to aggregate anything, that's pretty reasonable sizing. We've activated 500 SIMs, I told you, in 8 states, with 8 sites on air and 11 sites in process currently. We expect to have approximately 44 sites on air, supporting approximately 16,000 SIMs by the end of 2026. With future site planning ongoing, and at the completion of what we call Area 1, you may call it Phase 1 in your project, PLTE will support approximately 70% of all OT devices. We are not currently pursuing VoLTE right now because the demand for all of our data and fixed services is so great, and it's growing exponentially every day. It didn't take us very long as we started to review our plans for PLTE. It didn't take us very long to figure out that it was going to take a lot of resources just to support the OT business cases. It's not to say that there are not voice or VoLTE business cases out there. It's just that these take priority. So this is an example of coverage in Minnesota. This will give you an idea. We design coverage around business unit needs. Second to that, the second consideration was, do we have OPGW, dark fiber, transport go into these locations? And then do we have a substation in that location that we could utilize to build a site or already have a tower site in that substation? So as we work through this, as I said, this will cover roughly about 60 to 70% of our business users' requirements. In Area 2 or Phase 2 of our project, we'll be looking outside. But the thing about that is you're covering more geography. We made a decision early on to let our business drive the need for PLTE. We didn't just say, okay, we're going to build out our service territory. We went to all of our business customers, our internal customers, and we asked them, hey, what are your requirements? What do you need? These are the options that you have. PLTE was certainly one that stood out, and they got on board and got kind of excited about it. The big surprise was our actual gas customers and our gas business units. They were so excited, they started driving this project. They started making requirements and demands that, you know, hey, we have these business demands. We're going to have to provide something. Otherwise, we're going to have to go to commercial cellular, and according to projections, that's unsustainable because of the operational expense and costs that come with that. So it more than justified the private LTE project, but it also drove the way that we designed our coverage. You know, it's not, like I said, it's not like a field of dreams. It's not a build and they will come. It is actually driven by where our internal business units need coverage. Here's an example of a couple of our sites. This just gives you an idea of what a substation site would look like. This is one of the new monopoles. This was on the left side here was one of our existing sites. And if you look from the bottom, just above that first microwave dish, that's actually the LTE trapeze. So this is what I really wanted to talk about, the things that went well, and some of these may surprise you. So at first, we were thinking, well, we need to hire an engineering firm to come in and just handle this. After assessing our technical bench and being very honest with our capabilities and talking to our business partners and our utility partners across every service territory, we decided to pull all that in-house. That was a scary thing. But what we found is that made our team a lot more nimble. We could move a lot quicker. We were able to outperform a lot of outside contractors simply because we knew our processes. It didn't slow us down, but to train an outside vendor to learn our process and follow those processes, and it also allowed us to make quick decisions because we didn't have to have 14 meetings a day to decide, oh, are we going to build this site inside of this substation or outside the fence? The core and site deployment. I can't say enough good things about our Nokia partners and Anterix in terms of helping us get to this point. It has been a really good relationship. I'm not saying we made each other happy every day. I'm not saying we don't meet every day. I'm not saying that there are not challenges. But Nokia has stepped up to the plate for us every single time, and I can't say enough good things about them. Security access and vendor management. This really went well for us because we had fewer vendors. They were easier to manage. We brought security in day one. We had conversations with our security teams before the RFP was ever written. And while we were writing the RFP, they were involved. They were integral to a lot of the decisions that we were making. Even in the design phase, we had conversations with our security folks so that all of those security considerations were baked in as we got ready to deploy the network, as we got ready to stand up the cores. Again, I'm not saying that was all sunshine and roses. It was, some days it was hard conversations and we had to pivot. But that was one of the things that we did well, unintentionally, but that was one of the things that went very well for us. What could have gone better? You're going to hear this mantra over and over again. SIM cards, SIM cards, SIM cards. We started the SIM card process after having a meeting. Tim Spire is sitting down here. You can wave to everybody, Tim. We had a meeting with Ameren, and we discussed some of these things with them because we wanted to leverage their knowledge and experience. They were a little bit ahead of us. So we asked him, we asked him these same questions. What was your biggest, your toughest mountain to tackle? And he said, SIM cards. Start early, start often. So we immediately started. This happened somewhere around August 28th of 2023. We got our SIM cards 15 months later, after 4 mistakes. That was tough. And I'm being really honest with you guys because I want you to know exactly what you're going to be facing when you go to order SIM cards. Also encourage you, some of you have been invited to a meeting, those SIM card users. We're going to talk about that this afternoon, and we're going to compile a working group to kind of help with that, right? We got through that. We got 500 SIM cards, but at this time, trust had eroded, so we tested every single one of those SIM cards manually. Yeah, they were all good, but it was tough. One thing was setting correct expectations to vendors when working with a regulated utility. I don't care what flavor you go with, I don't care what vendor you go with, you really need to set the expectations of what it's like working with a regulated utility. Don't assume that because a company has worked for other utilities that they know what it's like your team knows what it's like to work with a regulated utility. They don't. Their vendors don't. Their vendors, in many cases, have no idea what that's like. So you need to make sure that you set aside a little time to educate them on your processes, how things work, how much time is required to do each milestone, and all the steps that it takes to accomplish that. If you don't do that, you're going to be dragging behind. It's going to be hard to stay on track. The other thing, prioritize the installation of your lab environments. I wish we had done this first. I'm sure if you ask all of our team, that they're going to tell you that, yeah, we wish we had built the labs out first, simply because there is an unending line of testing that needs to go on. And your customers are going to bring all kinds of widgets to you, wanting to put them on the network, and they're going to have all kinds of great ideas and epiphanies that they've had while they were in the shower, drinking coffee or talking to their buddies at other utilities, and it just stacks up, right? If you don't have a safe way for them to test in a non-production environment, then yeah, that's just kind of going to stack up and it'll be an issue. One of the things that we have seen is that, I mean, we're already stacking up. We're trying to test in parallel to deployment, and our customers can't wait to get in there to test their latest widget. So, and please test them before you put them on your network. I don't care what they say on the outside of the box. Make sure that they operate on your network. Allow more time for contract negotiations. This took us quite a while. It was one of the things that delayed us in terms of starting. We had planned on starting at least by the second quarter of 2023, and of course we didn't start until July. Start SIM card acquisition process earlier rather than later. Make non-prod or lab environment a higher priority, and help your vendors to understand your regulated environment. These are the things that are key, and I think if you take all of this into account, it'll probably help make your deployments a lot smoother. Okay, that's it for me. There you go, I'll give you a little time.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for letting me be here today to talk to you. I'm Spencer Burks, I'm from LCRA. So we're a little different utility. We are a public power entity, and we have a slightly different deployment. So I just wanted to start really with an intro on who we are. We're first and foremost, we are a river authority. That means we manage over 800 miles of river. We have dams, we manage the region's water supply. We're also a generation entity. We provide wholesale power services to distribution entities and cooperatives. And we also operate a fleet of generation that provides reliable power in ERCOT to hedge those power prices. We are a transmission entity. We're the second largest operator in the state of Texas. We have over 5,400 miles of transmission line, and that's very much a growing business for us. And finally, we do community service. Part of that's broadband. That's what we're doing here today with LTE. We also sell lease circuits on DWDM, lit services. Today, we operate 2 LMR networks, one at 900, one at 700 for public safety. And there's about 10,000 customers that we have on our network today, largely third party, that we will be migrating over to LTE, mostly for mission critical voice. Talk about that here in a second. And then finally, we have about 40 parks. This is a lot of land that we acquired when we were building the Highland Lakes. So we're buying large ranches and flooding them essentially, and taking that excess property that is available that we owned and making that available to the public. Okay, so here's our service territory. The light blue is really our river basin. So any water that falls in that area, we have sensors. They're looking at river stage. We're looking at stream flow. We're modeling how much water has hit the ground and is ultimately flowing into our lakes. So it's very much a mission critical network for us. We're moving that over to our LTE network. The brown outlines, these are third-party distribution entities. They're wholesale power customers, they're also telecommunication customers, so we provide services to them. Light bulbs, similar thing. These are municipalities, also distribution entities, telecommunication customers, wholesale power customers. And then finally in the green, these are the extended counties where we own transmission assets. So that'll give you a really good sense of what our coverage footprint is going to be. And one thing I do want to add here, I know there's a lot of talk. I wanted to have some, what are some of the technical nuances that we're deploying? One thing that's making LCRA unique is we are deploying a cloud-native infrastructure solution from Ericsson. So we're doing their CNIS, their small core, cloud core. We are deploying their ESM, their Ericsson Security Manager. It's some advanced core and RAN protection that they developed for the DoD. Cybersecurity is obviously a very big use case for us. We're also evaluating device security options. We're going to have 215 RAN sites. It's part of our initial deployment. Part of that is migrating all of our LMR customers on our 900 over to our system, and also expanding coverage in some of these counties where we're building transmission lines. All of our sites will have 7 days backup power. The intent of that really This is a mission critical network for us. This is our communications network we use for Black Start in the state. And if we have another winter storm Uri, for example, where a lot of sites in Texas didn't have power for 4 days, we expect all of our communications to be up and running. So we're going to have a private network with 7 days backup power at all sites. 4x4 MIMO configuration. A lot of that's giving us additional capacity. We get a little better coverage on our uplink, just doing uplink aggregation on sites. There's also some flexibility it gives us long term, especially as we start looking to do a 5G type migration in the future and having existing 4G LTE traffic, especially if we do CAT-M for smart meters. We'll talk on use cases in a second, but just a lot more flexibility that it gives us there. And then also the redundancy on a sector basis for our LTE network. And finally, I think we're Keegan's first customers here, but we're using Keegan's SIMs. So a little different approach from other utilities. We're really excited about them. They've been a really great partner, and we'll keep you all updated in terms of timelines. And we'll see if we have the same challenges that other utilities had, or if we can maybe shrink some of that timeline. Some other things that we're looking to do. We are deploying a multimedia broadcast core, so we're implementing MBMS. That's really for voice. Voice being our main use case for this network, and we actually have areas, especially in our Austin metro area, where we are capacity constrained with our 3x3 spectrum, and we view this as a technique where we can actually be able to get as many devices we want, being able to do some of these large top group calls. All right. So as I mentioned before, this is really for mission critical communications, and that starts with mission critical push to talk. So as I said, we're migrating all of our existing voice customers, it's about 10,000, over to our LTE network, and that will be interoperable with P25. We do anticipate over 20,000 devices. Ambitiously, we're about 27,000 on our network. Next big category is grid automation and modernization. So I talked earlier about our HydroMed network, all of our water sensors that are out there. We'll also be having, for our distribution customers, their SCADA, their FLIZR, their DER, all those smart grid distribution automation use cases, they will be on this network. One of the big things that we can also offer, because we're doing a private network, and that differentiates us really from AT&T, is we can implement a QoS. We can do a quality of service. So we're going to prioritize mission critical traffic, that's mission critical voice, and also these mission critical controls networks on our network. And that will be prioritized over all your TikToks, all your YouTube streaming, all that kind of stuff. Third big use case for us is smart meters, smart cities, IoT. There's over 4 million meters in our service territory. We're going to backhaul a lot of that. A lot of that will be collector stations to start, and we envision that being behind the glass LTE in the future. Finally, it's mobile data for us, and so this is kind of that fourth use case. So we're going to prioritize all the mission critical stuff. To the extent we have capacity left over, we're going to make that available for things like AVL and CAD, computer-aided dispatch. We actually have 2 transit authorities in Texas who are currently on our network for LMR. They're looking to do additional data use cases, and we'll do that over our LTE network. We'll also have a mobile workforce, so all the utilities, we all have our own fleet. We're tracking the fleet, we're doing telematics, but we're also doing outage management. So if you're in the middle of an outage, you're in another winter storm Uri, AT&T has their sites down once their battery runs out after about 8 hours. So then the vehicles, they can still have connectivity, they can see where the outages are, they can update databases, they can provide customers with that visibility in terms of where do we still have outages, when can they expect to have that restored. So that's a capability we'll look to employ on this network as well. All right, so we're behind our peers here today. We're behind Excel, we're behind Evergy, we're trying to catch up. We started planning last summer, we went through this summer. And right now we're in a process of deploying our network. So it starts with our cores. We actually had our lab core arrive in Austin today. In 2 weeks, we'll have our production cores showing up in Austin and San Antonio. We'll look to have those up and running hopefully by the end of this year. Our first RAN site begins in January, and we're going to start our 215 site build out. It'll take about 4 years. We intend to have the Austin metro area up and running by next summer. Okay, so I know one of the big things we want to talk to you is about lessons learned, so just a few things that we've seen so far. So what has not gone well? Early budget estimates. Seems like nothing that we put into our initial estimates before we did our RFPs was actually lower than what the RFPs came out to be, so something we were always revising up on. Number 2, equipment and material lead times. So just there's a lot of little things, especially if you get a core in place, until you really get a lot of things racked and stacked and plugged in, you may realize, oh, hey, I had a 100 gig optic to connect these two firewalls, but really it only works at 40 gig, and now it takes me 2 weeks to go get that in place. So there's a lot of little things that we've seen pop up and impact us on lead time. Another one we're working on is filters for our Band 106 sites. So It's a band 5 filters out on the uplink. We're waiting on those to show up in December, and once we have those, that's when we can go start our RAN deployment. And then third big thing is just available indoor staging space. So I did not realize how many pallets it actually physically took to do a RAN site. And so when you talk about actually staging all these sites and how much needs to be indoors versus outdoors, I think we're averaging about 10 pallets per RAN site. So just something to keep in mind as you're planning. Make sure you have some available indoor space. Okay, what has gone well, start planning early. So sooner is the better. There's some obvious things, and this kind of ties into number 2. I'll kind of link them in here to dedicate resources. So there's some obvious things like doing your RF plan, doing your data center prep, what's my design for my RAN site? So those are obvious, you've heard those before. Other things I would suggest, have dedicated procurement staff, get them involved really early, start doing your RFPs early, start doing your contract negotiations early. Networking, cybersecurity, there are guys working on your firewall configurations, understanding your actual network design and how you want to build out your APNs, start all that early. And then third big thing, build relationships. If you're here at this conference, then you're probably doing a really good job of this. But your vendors matter, your suppliers matter. You have a really good support system here with all the other utilities. My peers who are here today, I see Tim in the audience here. He was a big help for us. And obviously, I'm here available for other utilities coming behind us. We're more than happy to talk. And finally, here's really the biggest lesson learned. This is the biggest delta for us. You must have an executive champion to help get the right messages to the right people. We spend a lot of time doing a lot of planning internally, and until we have the right exec involved, we kind of get across the finish line. So that's an absolute must. We recommend that to everybody. All right, back to you, Mike.
All right. Is that fantastic or what? 3 different entities, all doing private LTE, 3 points in their journey, and all with slightly different lessons learned. This is why you're here. This is why UBBA exists. Poor Tim back, he had to, he was the first one. We're in the Midwest, the first people that showed up that tried to plow the ground. It's tough, but you can learn from them. Oh, they almost cut me off. We're learning from each other. Anyway, if you're not an UBBA member, you need to be an UBBA member. You need to come to these events. You need to talk to your peers. You need to do private LTE. In fact, you must do private LTE, just like you must do fiber, microwave, and everything else. This is your next logical, natural step. So, congratulations. Help me thank all of the presenters today and UBBA as an organization.